You know, I've taken the family to Italy a few times over the years, and the two things I can say about Italian cooking, simplicity and confidence. Whether it's a little pizza joint in Naples, where you can only order either margherita or marinara, or maybe a little place in Venice where you have no choice at all. You just sit down and eat. So today at Mill Street, we're going to take simplicity and confidence and apply it to three great Italian recipes. One is a ricotta cheesecake. The second is Piadina, which is actually a skillet bread. And we finish up with a creamy pasta sauce that's made with fresh goat cheese and olive oil. So today on Mill Street, it's simplicity and confidence. Stay tuned and hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Mill Street. I'm glad you're all here. We're going to do something, sort of a revelation today for me because, you know, yeast breads are the kinds of breads we tend to make in America and Northern Europe. And of course, most of the world, or a lot of the world, makes flatbreads. And we don't really make them here, but they take about 5 minutes to throw together. You can cook them in a skillet, and I don't know why we don't do more of that. So we're going to figure out how to do a flatbread, which is much easier than a yeast bread. This comes from northern Italy, Piadina. They just stuff with like arugula and ham and some cheese, fold it over and you have a sandwich, or you can use it just to use as a dip. So we're going to do it here, and we're going to do it quickly. And we're going to do it correctly. Right?
This is one of my favorites, Chris. It's super simple. You can do this faster than the delivery guy can make it to your house. And it's warm. It's warm. That's the good selling point here. Again, you mentioned it does not start with yeast. For flour, we're going to go with bread flour. It has good protein, helps build a really elastic dough that rolls out very thin. It's really important to get these thin so they cook quickly. It's about 2 cups here. Kosher salt here, 2 teaspoons. And instead of yeast, we do need a leavener of some sort. So we're going to add 1.5 teaspoons baking powder. So we're going to pulse that to mix. Whenever you add ingredients in a food processor, you want to pulse those dry ingredients to mix before adding anything wet. Otherwise, you get clumps. So in comes my favorite ingredient of the whole dish. We tried making this with all sorts of different kinds of fat. Olive oil, butter, vegetable shortening. Do you know what our favorite was?
Yeah, I know. My favorite was lard.
Yeah, it was lard. This has traditionally been made with lard.
The audience is sniggering at you.
They are. Those were happy sounds.
But if you notice the lard, I actually went to the supermarket to make it this weekend to buy lard, and there was no lard. They have vegan lard, which I don't even know what that is. I mean, how can you have vegan lard? I mean,
I don't know.
It was a vegan pig? I don't know. It used to be used, we have some right here, it used to be used for pie crust, like leaf lard. It comes from the fat around the kidneys, which is very neutral. It has to be rendered, which means it's cut into pieces and simmered very slowly, usually with some water, and then filtered out. And that's great for baking, for pie crust, for example. The great American pie crust is made with leaf lard. But for this recipe, we found, actually, that just this kind of lard, which you can get in most supermarkets, it has a porky, sort of bacony flavor, which we liked, because it gave this Piadina some flavor, which we really liked.
Oh, absolutely. Adds just enough deep porky flavor to give it character without sort of overwhelming it. One note I really want to make, though, is that if you buy lard, you want to store it well wrapped in your refrigerator. Like butter, it absorbs flavor really quickly, so be careful with it. This is 1/3 cup, and we're going to pulse that in for about 10 seconds. We want it to blend really well with the flour evenly. Okay, now we need to hydrate the dough, right? Most Piadina recipes just use water, but then we tried a trick that's used throughout the Middle East and in India. We added yogurt. So the yogurt has lactic acid, which helps really tenderize the dough, so it's supple and even easier to roll. It's 1/4 cup of water to start. Then we're gonna add 1/4 cup of yogurt, nothing too thick. And then we're gonna whisk the yogurt and water together. And with the machine running, we can add that liquid in. And we want that dough to come together into a nice, uniform, supple ball. Sometimes you may need to add an extra 1/4 cup of water. Okay, so it's been about a minute total. and it's come together in a nice ball. But if the dough's too wet, it's gonna be really hard to roll out. It's just gonna smear. So we can put that on the counter, gather up those loose crumbs. And I'm gonna give it just a couple kneads. And then I'm gonna stretch it just a little bit, and then I'm gonna divide it into 4 pieces, and those will be our 4 piadina.
So this is like making pizza dough,
It
essentially.
is, yeah. But takes, 30 seconds versus all day. And we'll round it out. I wish I could be one of those people who can round out 2 at once. Can you do that?
Of course.
Oh, yes, well. But you want to roll it in a cupped hand until it forms a nice tight ball. And it really helps whenever you're rolling dough, be it piadina dough, pie dough, pizza dough, the rounder the ball you start off with, the rounder your end pizza is going to be. So we'll flatten it just a hair there. And then we're going to cover it and let it sit for 15 minutes.
So that's all, just 15 minutes?
And that's time enough to make one of the 3 fillings we have here.
Okay.
So all told, this is about a half-an-hour project, right? So how long does it take your pizza delivery guy to come?
I never order takeout pizza. Got you. See, you always say you're such a great cook, and you keep talking about pizza delivery, man. I don't know.
No.
It's like...
Your kids are grown up. We're looking to northern Italy for our piadina dough, but as we said earlier, flatbreads like this are made throughout the world. And one of my absolute favorites is made in Turkey and Armenia, and it's lamagine. It's typically made with lamb and spices and tomato and a little onion. In this case, we're going to use beef over medium heat. We're going to put the beef in, and we want that to heat up. And it's about 2 to 3 minutes, just till it starts releasing some oils. So we're going to add half a large onion, finely chopped there. 1 large pepper is in there with the onion. And at this point, we can add our spices too. So we have 2 teaspoons of red chili pepper flakes. Is that
It's okay. No, it's all right. No.
2 teaspoons of kosher salt. The interesting thing is when you add salt at the beginning, it helps the cell walls of the vegetables begin to break down, so it cooks faster. We have a teaspoon of fresh ground black pepper, a teaspoon of ground cumin, and one of my favorite ingredients, a teaspoon of smoked paprika. We're going to cook this for about 5 minutes until everything softens. Smells great, looks great, but we're going to add tomato at this point to help make a sauce that'll stay in the sandwich. So we use 14.5-ounce can of fire-roasted tomatoes here. If you can only find regular tomatoes, that's great. The fire-roasted adds a little more smokiness to pick up that smoked paprika. So this is going to take about 8 minutes longer to thicken up, and then we're good to go.
Okay.
Creamy pasta sauces are finicky to make, and we wanted a way to make a stable sauce that coats pasta evenly. We found our answer in a technique from the late great dame of Italian cooking, Marcella Hazan. To start, we bring a large pot of well-salted water to a boil. We like to salt our pasta cooking water liberally, since it seasons not only the pasta, but also the finished dish. We use 2 generous tablespoons of kosher salt for 4 quarts of water. We then add 3/4 pound of Gemelli pasta and cook until al dente. Meanwhile, in a medium bowl, we combine 4 ounces Chevre, 5 tablespoons extra virgin olive oil, and 1/4 teaspoon each of salt and red pepper flakes, stirring and mashing with a fork until smooth. By adding oil to the Chevre, the cheese melts easily and won't turn into a clumpy mess when heated. Once the pasta is cooked to al dente, we drain the pasta, reserving 3/4 cup of the cooking water, and return the pasta to the pot. We then mix 4 ounces of baby arugula, the goat cheese mixture, and the reserved pasta cooking water, and toss until the cheese mixture is evenly distributed and the arugula begins to wilt. The reserved pasta water helps combine the ingredients and melt the Chevre. To finish the dish, stir in 3/4 cup of toasted and chopped walnuts and 1/3 cup of finely chopped fresh chives, and season this with salt and red pepper flakes.
So we have our filling done. We have waited about 15 minutes for the dough to really relax, and at this point, it should be really easy to roll. So you ready?
Well, I guess we're going to find out.
We are going to find out.
One way or the other.
So let's uncover those rounds for you.
Okay.
So it's really supple.
It
You're feeling
is,
that?
yeah.
So I tend to use my fingers and push it out a little bit, pat it out. And what we're looking for is a 10-inch circle. If you make it much broader, it's not going to fit in the pan. You really don't want to put any extra flour down. We have it out just in case our fingers get sticky. but having it stick to the countertop really actually makes it easier to roll. That's a nice circle, Chris.
I'm looking at yours like, man, okay.
I'm looking at yours
But
like, okay.
There's no competition in Mill Street.
Okay. So what you want to do is you want to poke it, use that fork over there, and liberally dock it. That prevents it from puffing up too much. We want sun bubbles, but not too much.
Is that enough docking? Or you're checking my docking?
Yes.
Nice. Nice.
So what's really important here to the success of the Piadina is a really hot pan. Now, we use cast iron here. It sort of replicates a griddle. You want to heat it over medium heat for 4 to 6 minutes. It really needs to be evenly heated through.
That's hot.
I think we're good to go. Let's put a Piadina in. It comes off really easily. You can hear the sizzle. Push it out just a little bit. And it's going to stick a little to the pan, and then it'll release once it's browned. And we're going to leave it in there for about a minute or two. You want to see some good charring, because that's a lot of flavor here. So you can start smelling it. It's really, the smell's changed. So it is beginning to brown. It smells like my morning toast, charred. There we go, some lovely browning there. It's another minute or two for the second side. And let's give that a check. Yep, there's some beautiful speckling there. It's good to go. Let's put that on the plate. And we'll cook yours off and roll out the remaining 2. So we'll have 4 Piadina total. And then we'll stuff them. We've cooked off all our Piadina now.
Good.
Your pretty one's up top.
That is nice. It's pretty nice. So I'm going to take a little fresh cheese. I'm just doing the classic sandwich.
It's hard to go wrong with classics. That is ricotta mixed with a little lemon juice. I'm going to go for the Armenian version here with the lamagine. Oh, that prosciutto looks great. So on the lamagine, we're going to add this great herb topping. I know, you just want to eat, but I'm going to talk about that.
You can go talk about your sandwich.
And then I'm going to drizzle it with some yogurt mixed with a little lemon juice. Okay, that's really good.
I mean, it only takes a few minutes to make. It has a great texture to it. It's warm, as you said. You can taste a little bit of that lard. It's fabulous. I mean, if you buy something at the supermarket, it just doesn't have that flavor.
And it's never going to reheat and taste the same way this does.
So today at Mill Street, we learned how to make a flatbread from northern Italy, Piadina, which means you take some bread flour, a little bit of yogurt, and some lard with a food processor, let it sit 15 or 20 minutes. Then it goes into a very hot cast iron skillet, a couple minutes aside. And there you have your own flatbread. You can use it for a sandwich. You can use it for a dip for hummus or tzatziki, maybe, if you like. And now I'm going to take your sandwich because it's just fair.
Yeah.
Have you ever noticed that people are putting fried eggs on almost everything these days, from noodles to salads to beans to even meat? And the question, of course, then is, what's the best way to fry an egg? Well, here at Mill Street, we always like to use our carbon steel pan, which is very well seasoned. And the first thing to know is you heat this up for about 3 minutes, but you do this over pretty low heat. That way you get the pan hot, but you also get it evenly heated. The next thing we're going to do after heating up the pan is to crack all of our eggs. So we'll do 4 eggs at a time into a bowl. So all the eggs go right into the pan at the same time. So it's been 3 minutes. The pan is now up to temperature. And we'll put just 1 tablespoon of butter in the pan. And when it stops foaming, that's the time to put in the eggs. So the butter's melted. It's just about stopped foaming, and we'll put in 4 eggs. I'll add a little bit of kosher salt. And then the key now is to put the top on. With the top on, steam collects in the pan. That steam is going to cook the top of the egg, so you don't have to turn them over. So you get the white cooked as well as the yolk at the same time. So this will take about 3 minutes, depends on your pan and your stovetop. The whites are set and the yolks are just a little bit runny. So this looks about right. That's how I like them anyway. Four perfectly cooked fried eggs in about 3 minutes, just with a tablespoon of butter. The yolks are runny, the whites are set, and a little bit of browning around the edges. So Erika, you're our resident Mill Street baker. I can't stand up and say bad things about American cheesecake, because I mean, I like American cheesecake.
Yeah.
So, but I like
place.
ricotta style, Italian style cheesecake too. I think there's more flavor, and it's got a slightly lighter texture, which I like.
Yeah, it's a lot lighter. It allows more flavors to come through. So we're gonna make a Ricotta-Semolina Cheesecake. And the first thing we're gonna start with is half a cup of sugar. And we're gonna process this with 2 teaspoons of lemon zest. I'm just gonna process this for about 15 seconds to release the oils. And now, of course, we're gonna be adding ricotta to our ricotta cheesecake. We found that it's really important to use whole milk ricotta. And this is 2 cups of ricotta. I'm gonna add this right in here.
So is low fat, or
Part
that
skim.
turns kind of nasty,
And
pasty?
it's very, yeah, there's already a lot of water in ricotta, and there's even more in the part skim, and it's too much. You're not gonna get the right texture. We really like adding mascarpone to this because it adds a little bit of extra richness and creaminess. It's basically the Italian version of cream cheese. And the reason we're processing all of this is because, as you notice, the ricotta has a lot of curds to it, and we really want to break that down and make it nice and creamy. So we're going to process this for about 30 seconds. All right, that looks great. Now see the difference? Do you see how creamy this is?
Now, a real ricotta cheesecake, though, does still maintain those curds. This is a different style, but a real ricotta cheesecake sometimes does still have that
it can.
texture.
It can, but we really wanted this to be a little bit more like a cheesecake.
When Erika does this, it's like, yeah, you can, except you'd be wrong.
But you wouldn't.
Yeah, but I wouldn't. Okay, got it. Check that off.
So now we're gonna add 3/4 of a teaspoon of kosher salt, and then a tablespoon of lemon juice just to brighten it up. And now we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of Marsala, dry Marsala wine. And this is a common Italian flavoring. Sometimes it's used in tiramisu. If you don't have this, you can also substitute dry sherry, works really well. Okay, next we're gonna add a 1/4 cup of semolina flour because we're not gonna be baking this in a water bath or bain-marie, which also makes this much easier to make, but you need to stabilize a little bit. We really like the semolina because it has a really nice coarse consistency to it.
So basically you were lazy, so the semolina, no, just kidding.
Busted. And now last we're gonna add our eggs, but you'll notice that we have separated our eggs. This is another thing that sets our cheesecake apart. We're gonna whip our egg whites to lighten it even further. So what I have here are just the 4 egg yolks. And then just needs to go about 10 seconds till it's all incorporated. I think that's good. So I'm just gonna transfer this to a mixing bowl.
So are you one of those mothers who doesn't let their children scrape the bowl a little bit because you want to get
eat
it
the
all?
raw eggs and get the salmonella? No, I'm not one of those mothers.
You're one of those?
So now we're gonna move over. This part is done. And we're going to whip our 4 egg whites here. We're gonna beat these till they're light and foamy. And then we're gonna add the rest of our sugar. It's a 1/4 cup of sugar here. So you're gonna go ahead and turn that on to medium-high for me, please. There you go. Okay, so the reason I waited to add the sugar until they had gotten foamy is because sugar actually can inhibit the formation of the air bubbles in the egg whites. So you want to get some air developed in there before you add the sugar. Okay, so you just want to put the whip in there and then pull it out, and you can see what kind of.
So it's a
soft
droopy
coming.
peak.
It's a droopy peak.
It's not like
yeah.
a stiff 2 or 3 inch
No,
peak
you
on
don't want it
top.
to stick straight up.
Okay.
Like if you were making meringue, you'd want to really take it further.
Got it.
So and we're going to mix this with our batter. We're going to start by adding 1/3 to our base. And this just helps to lighten it a little bit. You don't have to be super gentle at this point. I'm not necessarily folding, I'm more stirring. Okay, I'm adding the rest here. Gently fold in the rest of this. Just taking my spatula and you sort of bring it down towards the middle, and then you want to sort of go up the side and gently fold over the batter
So
onto
if you had
itself.
whipped these to more of a stiff peak, it would be much harder to incorporate the
Right.
whites in, which means you'd end up deflating the whites
Right.
by the time you got it all mixed.
And you can
right?
tell because they sort of form little islands.
Right.
I'm going to stop right here because I am at the point where I'm just seeing some faint streaks of the egg whites, and I know that it is time to stop because if I kept going, I would knock out, even more air. And we want this to be
A gentle hand.
Yes.
Yes.
If you hand me our prepared pan over here. Now, this is something we haven't talked about yet about this cheese. It's another thing that really makes this cheesecake one of my favorite cheesecakes. There is no crust. So, we've already saved so much time just by not having to make the crust and par bake it, let it cool. What we did here is we greased this pan and then we dusted it with some of that semolina flour that we put in the cake, and it forms basically a crust.
So you grease it with butter or just a spray?
You can use butter or you can use, cooking spray, but you just want to make sure you go all the way up the sides, really coat it with the semolina.
So no crust and no water bath.
Right.
I love it.
Easy, right? I know. I knew you would. All right, we're gonna put this batter right in here. Just gonna make sure that's, fairly smooth. So it's gonna puff up a lot during baking. Great, and then just gonna give it a couple taps, make sure there's no giant air bubbles lurking. Okay, now this is gonna go into a 350-degree oven, the middle rack, and it's gonna bake for about 40 to 45 minutes. Now I want you to see, this is how I know it's done. It's just jiggling. It's not wet in the middle, but it's jiggling like it's a bowl of Jell-O.
So it's got the Italian cheesecake jiggle?
Jiggle,
Okay.
yeah. But I don't want you to freak out because there's something else that I want to point out. You will notice there are some cracks on the sides.
This is what people do when they make a mistake. They go, hey, this is not a mistake.
Right. Exactly, but it's not. And I really thought it was. When I worked on this recipe, it dawned on me that it's not an indicator that the
Because it's whipped egg whites.
Right.
It's kind of like a souffle.
Right. It doesn't mean that it's overbaked.
It doesn't affect the texture of the cake.
Right.
Okay.
And as it cools, it's actually going to probably crack a little bit in the middle because it's starting to settle down and it's going to shrink a little bit. It's okay. So we're going to go ahead and let this cool for 2 hours at room temperature, and then we're going to go ahead and put it in the fridge for another 2 hours so that it fully sets up, and then we get to try it.
Great, that's really great news.
That's
Thanks,
good
Erika.
news. So you can go, do some errands and, keep yourself busy.
I'm going to go run a half marathon. I'll be back. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Chris, I know you've been waiting for a really long time for this. It's been 4 hours. We let it cool in the pan at room temperature for 2 hours before we could put it into the fridge for another 2 hours, but it is time. We are ready to try this.
You know what I do when I make something like this? I leave. I go away for a long period of time.
Really
so I can't just sit
away.
around the house because I keep checking on it.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. So what we're going to do to take this out of the pan, we're just going to run a knife around the sides carefully, just to release it. You can tell the semolina flour did its job, though, because you can see how easily that comes right out. See, it's beautiful. It's got a nice golden color to it.
No water bath, no crust. That's all
I know, it's amazing. So the best way to serve this is it's so light and fluffy, it can be a little difficult to cut. I'm going to heat up my knife, okay? And this is just a container full of hot water. You also want to make sure you dry it off afterwards so you don't get the cake all wet. Go. Give it another little bath over here.
Okay, you're just torturing me now. I mean, this is like, she's doing this as slowly
I want your slice
as
to
you
be
possibly
beautiful.
can.
Look. You're being very patient, Chris. This is what I love about this cake. It just pairs really well with some, light and sweetened berries, but here we have an extra special treat today. This is our Blueberry-Lavender Compote. You can get this recipe on our website. It is divine. So I'm gonna put a little bit on here for you.
That's very uptown. Blueberry lavender. I mean,
I know,
that's
right?
Really, yeah,
This is,
like,
we are not messing around.
oh, wow. I mean, you expect to get a mouthful of cheesecake, and it's very, very, very light.
It's very subtle. And the whip whites really make it, it's almost like a cheesecake souffle.
I was gonna say that.
I took the words right out of your mouth.
Well, it's like a cold souffle almost, right? So we learned at Milk Street today something about making a ricotta-semolina cheesecake, most of it in the food processor with mascarpone, ricotta, a little bit of semolina flour to hold the structure. Beat the egg whites separately, a little bit underbeaten, and then just barely fold it into the batter. Into the oven for almost an hour, but there's no bottom crust, there's no water bath.
Nope.
And you don't have to worry, this is the best part, you don't have to worry if the top cracks, as it doesn't mean a thing. You can get the recipes from this season of Milk Street at our website, which of course is milkstreettv.com.